In this video, we are going to start Chapter 7, Unemployment, Inflation, and Long-Run Growth. As of its name, the chapter is threefold. First, we will discuss the unemployment and how do we measure unemployment rate. And then we move to explain inflation or deflation. How is it measured? And finally, a brief discussion about long-run growth in the economy. But the first two learning objectives are very important. As you remember, we said that there are three major concerns in economy. Number one is output, or let me put the aggregate. Aggregate output growth. That's the number one we want to understand in macroeconomics. Number two, unemployment rate. Why sometimes it's very high, why sometimes it's very low. And number three, the inflation rate. Okay, for output growth, we said what is aggregate output? Aggregate output, we used gross domestic product or gross national product or national income. So we explained in chapter 6 how this aggregate output is being measured, and if it's considered as YT, and it must be real in real term because nominal might be actually inflated. The growth G is real growth, GDP in time T minus the real GDP in previous year divided by previous year multiplied by 100. In this chapter, we first explain how do we measure the so-called unemployment rate, which is again percentage. So this is percentage. And how do we measure inflation? We often use with pi as price, the Greek letter pi, and that is also a percentage. So these two are going to be explained in this chapter. So if we have a good understanding of output growth, inflation rate, and we are able to judge about the performance of the economy, and then we might be able to explain why these issues, negative growth in economy or recession or very fast growing economy with inflation, might be able, we might be in the position of explaining. So that is, we will do it in the part 3 of the textbook, but up to now we are just defining the issue and we are explaining how do we measure it. Okay, so that is the target of this chapter. So chapter 6 and 7 is about measurements or the indicators, aggregate indicators in economy at macro level. So again, the unemployment rate and inflation are key macroeconomic variables. In the context of the US economy, it is a special institution called Bureau of Labor Statistic, or BLS, is in charge of measuring the unemployment rate and inflation. So it generates some indicators which helps us to calculate the inflation rate and unemployment rate. And they announce it in their monthly reports. So what is this unemployment rate? There are certain definitions. Let's start from the overall population. So economy has, or the country have a population. Let's say it is 1,000, or 1 million or population, or 1,000 person. Okay, let's simplify it. 1,000 person. This population can be split into two groups. One group is called non-labor force, and the other one is called labor force. Let's assume that out of this 1,000, there are 400 person are the one who are not basically in the labor force, and 600 are in the labor force. How do we make a distinction between labor force and non in the labor force? It's actually, you should ask these questions. I start with the labor force. It has to be able to work, so ability to work. So they have to be fit. And number two, so A, B, they have to be willing, willingness to work. And this has to be all together. So both has to be. So the condition is and. A person who is able to work and willing to work is counted as the labor force. So it has to be physically fit, and also it's showing eagerness to work, go to work, and it applies for the job and seeking job. So searching actively. That is the meaning of willingness to work. If the person is graduate and he's got the ability but he's not seeking job, it means that he or she is not willing. So the opposite is coming here. A is unable to work. Maybe kids, children, or old people unable to work. And B, unwilling to search job. And here the condition is or. Either that or this is considered to be here. So if some person is able but is not willing, a jump comes to here. If a person is not able but willing, it has to be here, but not able and not willing, it comes here. That's the way that we make a distinction. So those 400 people are either too young or too old or too sick, which either are unable or they cannot, they are not basically willing to go to the work. So what is the unemployment rate? We cannot say it still because we don't know how much of the labor force is determining that who is finding job, who is not. So this is very important factor, and Bureau of Labor Statistic is, or Ministry of Labor in Oman is determining how much of the total population is considered as the labor force. And out of this labor force, this classified into two groups. A group which are unemployed, U, unemployed, or the ones who have find a job and are working, employed, and we call it E. Okay, so let's say out of these 600, the unemployed are actually 60 people who are willing to work, able to work, but they don't get the job. And the remainder, 540 person, are employed. These are the people who are fit and able, and they have got the job already. So they are working. So these are the definitions which we put it in the slide. Employed is a person which is 16 years or older and have 3 conditions. Number 1, who works for pay. So it gets paid at least 1 hour a week, 1 hour or more per week. So it's a paid work, and for within a week at least it's got 1 hour job which is being paid. So payment is very important. The second group are the people who work but they don't get payment, and the number of hours should be 15 or more hours per week. So if you're working 15 hours or more, even though if you don't get paid, you're considered as employed because you are producing something. These are like workers for the charity, workers for internship, workers for apprentice. So these are those people who are basically creating something, and even though they are not paid, but we count them as employed because they show they are able and they're willing. That's the reason. The reason for the first one is they are working and they get paid, even though small amount they get paid, so it shows their willingness and ability. And the third group, who has job but has been temporarily absent or without pay. So these are like people with leave of absence with or without payment. I mean, if it's with payments, it becomes category 1. But if they are out of the job, maybe they are hospitalized, maybe they had an accident, and they have no more legitimate number of leave of absence, we consider them that they are still willing to work, but it's a temporary situation. So temporary situation, they have a job, but even if they don't get paid, but this leave of job is considered as temporary. Okay, so these 3 groups are called employed, and we put it here like this 540 is those people. The unemployed, quite opposite, are a person of 16 years or older who is not working and is available for work and has made specific efforts to find work during the last 4 years, previous 4 weeks. 4 weeks, sorry, not years, 4 weeks. For the previous 4 weeks, they have shown that they are filling the application, go for the interview, and still is none of those 3 cases, but they are considered as unemployed and they are in the labor force. So they show their eagerness to work and they show their ability because they're searching for a job, simply. Okay, so based on this definition, then we have a labor force definition, the number of people employed plus the number of people unemployed and not in the labor force. So we would say that equations for economy, labor economics, is very simple. Very simple. Population is equal not in the labor force plus the labor force, and the labor force is equal those who are unemployed plus those who get job. And now here we can basically calculate the unemployment rate. Unemployment rate is going to be very simply defined. Unemployment rate is coming from the first equation. The little u in terms of percentage is the percentage of this, not out of the total population, but also from the only from the labor force. So it's u, capital U, divided by labor force, which is u plus e. So in our equation, it is 60 out of the total 600. And you just multiply it by 100 to say it in terms of 100. So this is basically 10%. 10%. And there's yet another factor. So this is a very important indicator, which is called unemployment rate. And the other important indicator which we often calculate, it's called labor force participation rate. And that is the ratio of the labor force out of the total population. So labor force divided by, so I just put 100 multiplied by 100 here, I forgot, population multiplied by 100. So in our equation, 600 labor force out of a population of 1,000 person. So we have 60%. The thing is that with the labor force participation rate, the higher the better. Because it means that more people are contributing to the working production. And the unemployment rate, general rule is this: the lower the better. Later we are gonna talk about what would be the best unemployment rate. Is it 0%? We would soon say that no, 0% is not necessarily a good unemployment rate. Okay, so this is the whole story of none in the labor force, a person who is not looking for job because he or she does not want a job, or is not looking, is not willing to search for a job. Whereas the labor force, the number of employed plus unemployed. And these equations are given as I just showed it in the tree diagram. I like the tree diagram. Sometimes they show it in the Venn diagram. The Venn diagram is like you put the total population is this rectangle, and a fraction of them is not labor force, so it's like 40%, and labor force, which is 60%. And then the fraction of this is unemployed and the remainder is employed. So you divide this over the whole thing from here to here. If it is a line showing the percentage. So in our case here was 10%, 10% of this 60%. And this is 90% of this 60%, not the whole population. From here to here is the total population. So the Venn diagram is alternative way of showing, but I like the tree diagram. It's very revealing. It's easy and simple to remember. You don't have to memorize things, but the formulas, you have to understand it. And this is a way that you can easily understand and memorize. So unemployment rate is number of unemployed divided by the labor force, so employed plus unemployed. And labor force participation rate, or LFPR, is labor force divided by the total population. So we have some total population in the US from 1950 to 2017. In 1950, it was 16 plus was 105 million, whereas in 2017 is 255. You know, the total population, we have actually the children is been taken out already. 16 minus is already been taken out. So it is 255 million is the US population in year 2017. And the labor force is shown in the second column. Employed and unemployed in the third and fourth. So if you add them, it's going to be equal to the labor force. And then the labor force participation is actually the labor force participation rate. This column 5 is actually equal the percentage change of the one divided by the labor force 2 divided by 1 in terms of the percentage. And the unemployment rate, you take the number 4 and you divide it by number 2 and you state it in terms of the percentage. Okay, so 62 million divided, 3.3 million divided by 62 is the 5.3% unemployment rate in 1950, and this is during the Donald Trump period, which was just before the pandemic. It was the lowest possible in the US economy. I mean, very, very, very reasonably low in US economy. Okay, so this is the way that it's been measured, and it's very simple and straightforward. We can have a breakdown of unemployment rate, usually among the young people. Age 16 to 19, just fresh graduates from the high school before going to the college, or these are the unemployment rate is very high, 21%. But among women is in 1982 was 8%. In 2018 was 3%. Among the men, it's 3.4%. Among the African American is usually very high as compared to the European American. If it is racist to write black here and you have to write African American, here you should also write a European descent American, because they were all migrants in any way. Both black or white were migrants, and sometimes they consider that if you write the black, it's racist. Even the white should be. People don't have color. They have merits. Okay, so it is often among the European origin, the unemployment rate is higher. So in the US, they make it this decomposition between men or women, both sex, etc., etc. It's like this. Another way of breaking down, which helps to better understand the unemployment rate, we should not consider the unemployment rate very mechanically, because this is a number. This is a number. And how is it reflecting the truth about unemployment? It depends. It depends. Economists are saying that basically, let's see how much of this labor are considered as discouraged workers. Discouraged workers, or DW, are those who have just left the labor market. Imagine that out of these 60, there were discouraged workers are 40 people, which has already came and joined to here. They no longer search for job. Okay? So they have already left. They have already left, and after they leave, we have 60 unemployed, and the labor force is this. So the true unemployment rate are actually then would be, you have to give back this 60 to this, so it's 100, because they have just left the market, labor market. But according to some economists, but they must be considered as labor force. So if we give back that 40, so this is gonna be in fact 360, and this is gonna become 640. So the true unemployment rate would be this divided by 640. If you want to calculate the true unemployment rate, let me wipe this Venn diagram. So just like GDP, we said that it is there any bias? The question is this: is there any bias in measuring unemployment rate? The answer is yes, there are. If we have discouraged worker actually suddenly shows that unemployment rate is showing this much, 10%. But the unemployment rate, true unemployment in case 1, so this is with the discouraged worker effect, we have to give back that discouraged worker. So initial U plus the discouraged worker and initial labor force, because the discouraged worker, the moment you are giving it back, the labor force is increasing. So the both denominator and the numerator both are increased with those 40 person who have left the job market. So let's put it back. This was 60 plus 40, discouraged worker, and this was 600, and here becomes 640. So if you do the calculation, it shows that it's approximately 15%. So we see that some economists are saying that those 40 people who have left the job market, they deserve to be considered as unemployed because they showed their eagerness and their willingness and effort for so long to be in the labor force and to search for job, but they left the job market. So actual unemployment rate, the true unemployment rate, is to give back the discouraged worker to the labor force. So this is the case 1. There's yet another biasness with the labor force is among these employed. We might be biased in measuring them. Here we have, actually this one is not shown in, is not explained in the book, but it is important for you to know about it. How much of these 540 are the full-time and how much are the part-time? So the full-time, let's say full-time, these are get paid and they are in the payroll and they work, let's say 400 are the full-time. But for the part-times, there are 2 types. Some of them are voluntary part-timers. They want to be part-time. It is their choice. And let's say that these are 100%. So the other 40 is called involuntary part-timers. And these are according to 40 plus 100 plus 400. This is 540. Okay? Some economists are saying that these people should be counted here rather than being, for now forget about the discouraged worker. Actually, let me connect the arrow here. This should be considered as unemployed. Why? Because although they are getting paid, but they want to be actually full-time job. When they go back home, they sit and search job for full-time. So they are still not potentially should be considered as unemployed. So although I write it here, although statisticians called employed, but they are actually unemployed because it is against their will. It is not their choice. They were searching for full-time, but they have been given offer as a part-time. And for the sake of paying some of the bills, they are accepting the job, but they are not happy. So it is not their choice to be on that low salary thing. So in the case 2, the case 2 of is called involuntary part-timers effect for true unemployment. So true unemployment number 2 would be the U plus the involuntary part-timers divided by the labor force. Because both are inside the labor force, so where I'm putting a dash here. So we are not giving something to the labor force to get it back. So the denominator is not changing. The denominator is remaining as it is. So in this case, actually, this is 40, so it's 60 plus 40, but the denominator is remaining as, so it's multiplied by 100. And if you do the calculation, it becomes 100 divided by 600 is about 16%. So you see, the true unemployment rate is higher than. True unemployment in case 1 is bigger than the actual unemployment rate. True unemployment rate for the case if you are including the involuntary part-timers, you will have a higher than that 10%. So this is bigger than 10%, this is bigger than 10%. The case 3 is in the case which both happen. So true unemployment rate case number 3, it's when you have some discouraged worker, you have to give it back, and you have also involuntary, so it becomes U plus discouraged worker. Whenever it's discovered worker, it comes to the denominator as well. And you have also some involuntary. You have to also consider them as unemployed. So it becomes 60 plus 40 plus 40 divided by 640. So in this case, actually, it's 21%. So again, in a general case, the true unemployment rate is often bigger than the actual unemployment. Sometimes we put the A here as actual, the true and actual. So economists are saying that there is this issue of the definition of employed and unemployed labor force, non-labor force. You should not treat them as the black and white. There are some gray lines. If you want to measure the true unemployment rate, you should include the discouraged worker and involuntary effect to calculate the true. Just like the GDP had so much deviation or biasness against the well-being or the happiness of the people, the unemployment rate also is deviating or has got some bias against its true measure. So these things are explained in a few. The book is only focused on the discouraged worker effect, the decline in the measured unemployment rate that results when people who want to work but cannot find a job grow discouraged and stop looking. The moment they stop looking, they should be counted as not in the labor force. So dropping the base of the calculation, the denominator or the base of the labor force is going to be deducted. This is happening once the labor force participation rate drops. We said the labor force participation, the more the better. If you calculate the labor force participation rate, the moment you see that the labor force participation rate drops, there is a chance of having high discouraged worker effect. Okay, so in the statistics, these are the duration, and another way of knowing that discouraged worker exists. In some years, you see that for 20 weeks they were searching for job, or for 33, 36, or 40 weeks they were still insisting and seeking job. So they were still in the labor force. After that, they give up and then they drop. So whenever the unemployment rate drops, check the labor force participation rate if that is dropping too. Because if that is dropping, then you are most probably have a huge amount of discouraged worker effect. But if some people are leaving job market because they are in the retirement, it means that the younger people are joining the labor market and the older people are leaving. It should not change the unemployment rate as such. So this is a reality in the ground. And what would be the another question is the good question is the following. To what extent unemployment rate is good and normal? So we know that unemployment rate varies between 0% and 100%. 100% is a disaster. No one is working, no production. 0% might actually consider it as a good thing, but economists are saying now the unemployment rate 0, it means that we are pushing too much. We become fragile to if some people get accident, then the production suddenly drops, and so the there is a range of which U is positive, and we consider as normal. So what is that extent? What is that extent of U or unemployment rate which considered as normal? For understanding that, we would say that how much it costs the society. Social cost. If you want to know how much costly, how much it imposed opportunity cost on the economy, we should break down by unemployment type. It's related that see, we said about the willingness. Willingness to work. Is it voluntary or is it involuntary? So voluntary is okay. If some people, by saying voluntary, willingness either to stay in job or leave the job, in either case. If it is the choice of the people in the labor market, it's okay. If it is not their choice, it is bad. Okay, if it is involuntary, this is the problem. But we always have some people who voluntarily wants to leave the job. And in terms of this voluntary, we should ask that willingness of whom? Are they the workers or employees or the companies or the employers? This is also the suppliers, or these are the demanders. Is it a demand side issue or the supply side issue? We know that in the labor market, there are two groups. In the demand is the firms, okay, and in the supply we have the households. Okay, so in the demand it's the companies, or I already said firms. It is the employers. Here is the employees. Okay, so they are supplying their manforce, number of people or hours, and they go to the work, and then in return they get paid. So for them is a expense, for them is the income. Okay, If it is the choice of them or them, if it is either of them, it is their choice of either the workers or the firms. If it is the choice, we would say still okay. And here the companies are often driven by their decision is that technology change. Technology change is asking them to hire people with better skills who can work with under that technological advancement. So this is basically, we would say that there are three types of unemployment. One is called frictional unemployment, structural unemployment, and cyclical unemployment. This frictional unemployment is the choice of workers to go out of the work. It is their choice. The structural unemployment, the technology is improved and it's the choice of firms to lay off because of the technological improvement. So a structural improvement has taken place. They lay off many of the workers. So in either case, both of them is the choice and it's voluntarily taking place. So they are okay, normal. So if we would say that unemployment rate consists of frictional unemployment rate, I'm going to explain and give more examples, and structural unemployment rate and plus cyclical unemployment rate. Cyclical is the danger, is the trouble. This has got a high social cost, whereas these two are okay. They have minimal. Maybe a structural unemployment rate might have a higher cost than the frictional, but still it is. So together, these two, we call them natural rate of unemployment rate. So I will write it here, natural rate of unemployment. What is left over? So we can make a conclusion that cyclical unemployment is actual unemployment minus natural rate of unemployment. This can be either positive or negative, whereas these are always positive. These two are always positive, is non-zero. So if we have like 10% and 5% is here, so we have 5% as cyclical unemployment. Okay, so 10%, 5% of it was normal, additional 5% is high unemployment or recessionary unemployment. So these are, because it's positive and negative, it goes ups and downs against the natural rate of unemployment rate. It might be higher or lower. We call it cyclical unemployment. So let me tell you in the next slides, frictional unemployment is the portion of unemployment that is as a result of normal turnover in the labor market, used to denote short-run job or skill matching problem. So if Mohsen is working and he decides to just leave the market because he is thinking that he can get a better job, although the unemployment rate is increasing, but because it is the choice of Mohsen, and because it is a temporary issue, and because it's a short run, so we consider it as a frictional. It's a friction between U and E. The reason that we are using the word friction Friction is like etkak. If you are having a box, pushing a box on the floor, there is a resistance against this, so it heats up basically. That's called friction, right, in physics. So between U and E, some people are going here and coming back, so there is a friction between U and E. That is why it's short run, leaving the job, going to the job market and leaving, again finding another one and leaving. So these are the people who are temporarily leaving the job, and it is based on their choice. They do it voluntarily. They do it by their own choice. So it's normal. And it's give the freedom of choice. Freedom of choice is good in an economy. So as a result, we call it frictional unemployment, and it's in normal economies some 2 to 3% of the labor force, of total labor force are usually frictional unemployment. The structural is a little bit more severe. It's the portion of unemployment that is as a result of a change in the structure of the economy, the technological improvement. For example, when the digital cameras came, the old-fashioned photography and film development stopped. So many people who had that job, they were fired or they were laid off by the companies. It wasn't the workers' choice, but it was the choice of the employers. Okay, so it is also normal because structural change is often technological improvement makes the economy do better. And as a result, we don't say that this is necessarily a bad thing. So it's a choice of the firms, and it's okay. And usually structural, if it happens, sometime 3 to 5% is. So on average, altogether, it's approximately, we can say that natural rate of unemployment is varying about 5%. In the US economy, like 5%. Maybe some economies 6%, 8%. We have to work to determine it. And once you measure the unemployment rate, consider your natural, you can say that how do we measure this? Remove the years of inflationary years and the recessionary years and the remainder of the years, make an average of unemployment rate that will give you the natural rate of unemployment in an economy. So this is just a rule of thumb or practical way of, in the US is about 5%. So if the US economy is in 2% unemployment rate, so here the cyclical unemployment rate is 2 minus 5 is minus 3%. Or if the unemployment rate is 15%, so then cyclical unemployment is becoming plus 10%, because 5% of that is natural and the 10%, so it can be positive or negative. And these are the major issues, and it's very costly for the society. So we call it natural rate of unemployment is the unemployment rate that occurs as a normal part of the friction, or sometimes as a result of the structural change in the economy, as it's the way that the economy is functioning, and sometimes taken as the sum of frictional plus unemployment, frictional unemployment and structural unemployment rate. And economists have the way to measure the natural rate of unemployment. And then once you want to know to what extent we are in the trouble, if the closer you are to the natural rate of unemployment, the economy is got and normal. If it is too low, like 2%, whereas the natural rate of unemployment is 6%, this 2% is a trouble. It means that we are pushing too much. It's most probably is leading to an inflation, because more money is being pumped to to make those who are frictionally unemployed to accept to come to the workforce. So this is what we should know about the unemployment. So the social consequence, if it is cyclical unemployment rate, social opportunity cost is very high. People may actually suffer a lot, families will suffer, and some people may go suicide and things like that. So the worst case was the Great Depression of 1930s, which we see it a lot of turmoils in the not only the US economy, but also in every other economies in the world in those days. Just First World War has finished and people are making every effort. They ran out of their savings. They came to the city to find a job, but the banks were bankrupt. The companies are going down. There's no recruitment. These are basically the social consequence, like the Arab Spring was the high unemployment rate caused the Arab Spring to take place. So it may actually lead to a social uprise and rebellions, things like that. So this is the cyclical unemployment is the most severe cost of unemployment in the society. Okay, I'll stop it here, and the next video we will discuss the inflation and deflation. Thank you.